Sup guys, this is JusticeSoulTuna with another voice of JST, here to talk about something that, well, honestly, I never thought I'd have to cross into, and honestly, at the end of the day, this is all opinion, this is all speculation. But this is one of the things that's really bugged me for a long time. People who know me, people who talk to me, know that this is honestly one of the major issues that, personally, I feel like is always addressed, but it's always addressed in a haphazard way. Things get thrown across all the, all around the place. Debates never really go right. I'm here to shed some light on it, and the topic, as I'm sure you've seen from the title, is sexism in gaming. Like, what's sexist in gaming? Now, I want to tackle this from a common sense standpoint, and I actually want people, just like with most of my other videos, to actually think about this. Now, as we all know, people, for the majority part, seem to feel like the sexualization of women in games is wrong because women in games are nothing but tits and ass, nothing but fan service to attract a male demographic, and it's wrong and demeaning to women. Now that you have the general idea of where I'm attacking this from, we actually have to think about all of these issues, because honestly, I feel like first of all, I don't agree. That's the thing. But let me actually break this apart bit by bit. All right, and I've actually got a couple of topic starters. See, when people say that it's all women are like that. First of all, how are all women like that? I want all these people who say this, that all women in games are just the same sexualized tits and ass fantasy. I want them to actually go to a list of video games, pick out every female character in the game, and tell me if they're exactly like that. That's the first thing. Because if you ask me, you're by saying that, you are ignoring what all the character types are. Basically, all they love to do is they blow up the ones that are sexualized, and they leave alone the normal ones. People say, oh, in Borderlands 2, Moxie is such a a slutty character. She's just boobs fan service for the the teenage boys or whatever. Well, what about Tina? Tina is a strong character in the same game. Hilarious, funny, a bit disturbed, and a central part of the plotline. So we just ignore her, but we say Moxie's a problem? How are all women in games the same if we've got a Tina next to a Moxie? Then you would then say that the problem is that, but Moxie's a sexualized figure. Why does she have to be sexualized? Like, I have to say, why not? What's wrong with her being good looking? Moxie's a character who likes to flaunt. She's a character who likes, by design, was designed to be that way. Tiny Tina is a little girl. Of course she's not going to be like that. Of course she doesn't have the same proportions. Whereas Moxie, on the other hand, is. The thing is, just like in real life, some women have big proportions which they like to flaunt, some don't. It doesn't mean anything beyond the fact that these are the way the characters are designed. If you're attracted to Moxie, fine. If you're not, you're not. Because one big thing is, people have an assumption that women characters are put in games like that to be what's only attractive and considered attractive. I don't see how. Unless the game explicitly tells you that the character of Moxie in Borderlands 2 is what an ideal woman is, and everyone should be attracted to that. I don't see why people have to fly off the handle. Because mind you, there are several different characters in Borderlands 2, several different female characters, which are attractive. Obviously there's Maya and there's Lilith, both who look different, and both are attractive for different reasons. So how can you say that Moxie is put in the game to be, look at this woman, she's the ideal female character with the ideal proportions? Nobody ever said that. Now, here's one of the biggest things I feel like when it comes to sexism, quote-unquote, in gaming, that's ignored, and it's context. So many times people ignore context. So many times people ignore one fundamental fact about video games, and that's they're video games. It's fiction. It's not real. It's not meant to be realistic. It's not mirroring anything. People say that, there's these big boob characters and it's wrong because it's like, why can't they just be regular boobed or whatever? I'm like, first of all, can I just make a common sense point before I go back to the point of context? People may have forgotten this, but there's big boobed women in real life. What a shock. What a shock. And people say that, oh, but women, the only women who have boobs that size, ridiculous size in gaming, something along the levels of the Sorceress and Dragons crowd, which I'm going to talk about later. They say are only at porn stars or whatever. I find that offensive. Are you implying that the only big boobed women are porn stars? Because that's wrong. If you ask me, and this is part of my major overarching point, that to me is offensive. Saying that a large-breasted woman is only a porn star, that's offensive. Saying that a woman who was born to have big proportions is somehow a sexualized object in real life, to me, that's the real sexism. not the game. A woman being depicted as having large breasts or proportions that aren't quite right. Sorry, in the game, is in no way sexist. As a woman in real life having it is sexist. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, people ignore context. People forget that characters are designed in different ways. Some characters, like let's talk about male and female characters. Some male characters are designed to be big, buff, and gruff. Some are meant to be small and timid. Some are meant to be huge. Some are meant to be small. Some are meant to be muscly. Some aren't. Same with women. Some are meant to be athletic. Some aren't. Some are meant to be regular civilian type women. Some are meant to be like battle clad strong women. They're all different. People ignore context because they forget, like, within the fictional world that that they're in, it's fine to have all these different body types. I gave the example of Borderlands 2, but look at other video games. For example, one of the biggest ones is, like, say, Soul Calibur. People always say, oh, Ivy and Taki in Soul Calibur are so wrong. Look at Taki's absurdly huge boobs. Look at Taki's ridiculous proportions. Look at Ivy's big boobs or whatever. It's like, but that's what annoys me. It's like, with it, it's like, how can you make a huge deal about Taki and Ivy, but you completely ignore, like, Talim and Amy, who look nothing like those two, who have not this, they don't have the same mannerisms, they don't have the same design. Why do people say that all women in games are like that, when there's obviously women there who are nothing like that? And if you were to say something like, oh, but nobody cares about those two, not really. People loved Amy, people loved Talim. Talim was a fan favorite. Talim is a great character. But that's not to say Taki and Ivy aren't. And that's another thing that annoys me. That's the next point I'm going to make. Why do people say that if a female character in a game is sexualized, they're just an object? They're just put in there to be objectified, so only guy characters like it. See, that's another thing that's sexist to me. Saying that women that are sexy or have big proportions are just objects, to me, that's not the game being sexist. That's you being sexist. Are you telling me that if a woman has big proportions, that somehow she's just a brainless, stupid, objectified character? That to me is insulting. See, to give the example of Ivy, Isabella Valentine, right? On the surface, you may look at her, say from Soul Calibur 1 to Soul Calibur 2, and think, whoa, that character's got big boobs, oh, she's kind of sexy. But upon sitting down and playing Soul Calibur 2, finding about her story, you find out that not only is she one of the deepest characters, she goes through, one of the biggest, like, sort of life choices, like going from being bad to being kind of good, like fighting against Cervantes, who, mind you, is her father and one of the biggest characters within the Soul Calibur series. Right? And she continues to sort of define her life and her history by her rules. That's a really great and well-designed character. Same with Taki. Taki is a series legend. She's been in it since the very first game. She's been in it since Soul Edge, aka Soul Blade, on the PS1. Yeah, large boobs, but it's like, why are you blowing up the fact that she's got boobs? She's got boobs, so she's not a deep character? It's like, do you know what that's implying? It's implying that only small-boobed women are good characters, are characters worth anything. And as I said, that to me is more sexist than anything else. Because here's the thing. Taki, like Ivy, is a great character. She is a demon hunter. She has spent her whole life, refining her ninja skills to, take out demons wherever possible with her two blades, Rekimaru and Mekimaru, if I'm saying that correctly. And ridding the world of Soul Calibur's, ridding the world of Soul Edge's evil. That's what her story's all about. She's a series veteran. She's really fun to play. Really, deep and interesting character. Yes, she's beautiful. She's beautifully designed, and she's hot. She's got huge boobs to match that. But why blow that out of proportion? I mean, no pun intended. But why would it be okay for like someone would argue, but why can't she be that same character with B-cup boobs? And my answer to that is, why can't she be that with D-cup? Are you saying that her having big boobs is such an issue? People say that, people are immature if they like big boobs or whatever, because it just demeans women. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Demeans women, and it's not right. Why can't a woman have big boobs and still be a decent character? It's like, that's what I don't understand. There's all these absurdly sexualized male characters in games, like absurdly ripped, huge guys, muscly guys, impossibly proportioned, running around like curb-stomping like enemies and stuff. But when there's a woman who, in a game, in a fictional universe, has proportions that of course aren't realistic, people lose their shit. It's like, why? It doesn't make any sense. That's the next point. Realism. Why do people put realism into it? people would say that, like, and this is to bring about, like, the story about, like, Dragon's Crown, because this is one of the major issues. People were saying, like, the design of the sorceress in Dragon's Crown is absurd, it's offensive, it's demeaning to women, you know, boobs should not, like, can't be that big, there can't possibly be big, they can't possibly be boobs that big, and if they are that big in real life, then it's a porn star. Like, just listen to that statement, see how offensive that is, you know. And it's like, but that's just it, though. Even the author himself said, yes, despite that homophobic slur, which many people will, you know about, think about it. He said that it was meant to be a fantasy universe with pretty much, like, over-exaggerated character designs. I mean, look at the fighter, like the knight character. He is some overly buff, ridiculously looking, you know, like, knight character with a huge torso and really small legs. Even the dwarf is a little bit similar, right? And notice how the Amazon's got, like, huge legs, but a small torso. Sorry. So how can you ignore that and say, like, the sorceress is the only character in that game that's ridiculous? The whole game is ridiculous. Dragon's Crown is meant to be this fantasy adventure along the lines of Golden Axe, with these fantasy characters, right, of ridiculous proportions, going around doing ridiculous things, like juggling enemies and firing magic and stuff. So it's like, you know, oh, those boobs aren't realistic. What? And the shooting magic out of wooden staffs is realistic. The, you know, getting a 30-hit combo in the air is it's like, what's this realism bullcrap people are talking about? It's stupid. I'll even go back to the point of context. People say that all women in games are like that, but that's ass crap, first of all. That is complete ass crap. Because you can look at a long list of women in games, and not all of them have the same proportions. All women in games have different proportions, different sizes, different heights, different ages, ethnicities. They're not all the same. They're not all sexualized. They don't all have big boobs. They don't have small boobs either. They have different sizes. And see, that's what bugs me. It's all about boobs. You know, let's be honest. It's like the size of the boob somehow determines whether a female character should be seen in a certain way. To me, that's what's demeaning. To me, it's how much emphasis people put on the size of a woman's boobs in relation to her as a character that bugs me. Should we judge men by the same standard? Of course it's double standards, but should we judge men by the same standard? The size of his muscles determines, like, the importance of the character. See, look, people would argue that, oh, but it's out of context, you know, them having big boobs in this universe or whatever. It's like, what's the need for it? Look, do you know what's out of context? If I was playing Call of Duty, right, and I'm in a really serious mission, like, you know, lots of death and destruction by me, and suddenly a double E cup woman just walks by the screen, that's out of context, okay? That's out of context. What about Splinter Cell Conviction, when I'm stalking my prey, trying to find, the right area to catch him off guard, and suddenly I just look to my right and see a billboard of, like, a woman in a bikini? That's out of context. Out of context is when sexualization is made to be just that. Sexualization. If the character of Ivy, Isabel Valentine, in Soul Calibur was literally just a huge-titted whore, just a big bimbo put in the game to be fan service and nothing else, then yes, I would agree with you. That's sexualization. That's demeaning. But not demeaning to all women, just demeaning in general. Alright? That's the first thing. Because that's the point I want to make. Why do people say that a sexualized woman is demeaning to women? How? That's what I don't understand. If this character is designed to be a bimbo, right? Let's even talk about characters designed to be a bimbo. Let's just say, like, a hooker in a Grand Theft Auto game. That's a bimbo character. It's meant to be a sexualized character, there for the point of sexualization. How is that demeaning to all women? It's like you see a fictitious video game character. Fiction, people. You see a fictitious video game character depicted in a certain way, and that's somehow demeaning to all women? How is that so? So if we see a weak, feeble, loserish character, a loserish guy character in a video game, that's demeaning to all men? I mean, do you see how that doesn't make any sense? You flip it on its head and you see why it literally makes no sense. You know, there is no, like, how is realism an argument? In video games, we've got sci-fi, fantasy, horror, all these, different things that basically are a far cry from reality, what reality will ever be. So, people saying that, like, it should be realistic. Not really. There's very little realism in games. Even games that are much closer to reality. Games such as, like, military games or strategy games. Those games are much closer to reality, but then there's still things that happen in those games that just are ridiculous. So that's the first thing. This isn't to say that it's fine to have absurdly big boobs in all the women simply because it's unrealistic. But that's just it, though. Not all the women are like that in games. You know, like look at Street Fighter, for example. In Street Fighter, right? Not all the women in the game have, like in the games, let's say Street Fighter 4, don't all have the same proportions, do they? You've got Chun-Li, who is known for her, you know, her big legs, for the use of attack lightning legs, right? You've got Cammy, who's more slim, she's more acrobatic. You've got Sakura, who's a schoolgirl, so she's, you know, much younger, much slender figure, that kind of thing. You've got Rose, who's, you know, a mature woman, that's why she's kind of got, like, curves and all that kind of thing. So you've got these different character types. Are they all the same character type? Do they all have the same proportions? Do they all have absurdly huge boobs bouncing around and that kind of thing? Not really. And it's like, that's what's stupid. And then somebody would bring up the argument, what about Dead or Alive? Dead or Alive is a completely absurd, sexualized romp with, you know, bouncing mammary glands all over the place. And it's like, look, I find that Dead or Alive is one of the hardest things to defend because people, if in my opinion, are too immature to even just tackle it from the right perspective. See, while the design philosophy may not have been perfect, Itagaki had the idea that why can't we have characters that are sexy and kick-ass at the same time? Guys do it all the time. Why can't women do it? You know what I mean? It's like, why can't we have women who have, you know, amazing proportions, athletic bodies, you know, well endowed and do well? Is that supposed to represent something? Well, it's not meant to represent anything. It's not meant to represent that women are supposed to be like that. Women come in all shapes and sizes. Even the women in DOA come in all shapes and sizes, just like the men do. People forget that there's male characters in DOA. They always have been. There's about as many male characters as female characters. That's the first thing. And look at them. Look at Ryu Hayabusa. He's so freaking ripped. He's like this ridiculous, powerful ninja. You know, hella unstoppable. Or what about, you know, Hayate or like Jan Lee? Look at their, like, impossible abs and stuff like that. You know, is that demeaning to men or giving an unrealistic impression of men? Hardly. A lot of people say, and a lot of women would say, maybe feminists, certain women, would say that it's like, it's a sign, it's basically not welcoming to women because it's giving the impression that this is what women should be like, and you know, it's demeaning to women who aren't like that. And I don't agree. It's a work of fiction. In no way is the game Dead or Alive, or any game that has, you know, women like that, saying that, you know, this is what women are. Like, is the game an infomercial? Is the game saying like you want to be like a Dead or Alive fighter, then train hard, buy protein drinks, and fast, and read magazines? It's not saying that, is it? I don't understand why it's like, if a guy looks at work of fiction, it's perfectly fine to understand that, yeah, it's fiction, those guys aren't real, who cares? You know, this doesn't mean anything to me as a person. My body type is different. Why is it that a lot of women try to white knight other women by saying that's how women feel? Do women speak for all women? They don't. So why do, you know, what to me is sexist is people, men and women, believing that women are so weak and feeble-minded that if they see a female character in a game, they're somehow threatened by them. That to me is sexist. Are you implying that women don't have a mind of their own? That they can't tell fiction from reality? That they can't understand that if a woman has ridiculous proportions in a game, then that in no way has anything to do with them as a real woman? That's what I don't understand. Why do we need to white knight women? We don't. We don't. They have minds of their own. I'm sick and tired of people, because look, people are always saying that the games are the ones that are sexist. But how are you not sexist by implying that women somehow need to be shielded from the idea that fictitious women have ridiculous proportions? Because it's silly. Now look, in Dead or Alive, and this is to bring back the idea of context, in Dead or Alive, right, there's obviously all these different female characters, and I'll use the same example of Isabella Valentine. You may look at a character like Tina Armstrong, right, who you'd say is one of the biggest poster girls for the Dead or Alive series, right? Let's not forget, Dead or Alive, first of all, is a fighting game. It's a fighting game with a story, with characters, with all different storylines, backgrounds, and that kind of thing. Of course, you could just pick Tina, you know, press some buttons and go crazy, watch her bounce around, use camera mode to perv on her, all that kind of thing. But that is your choice. See, Tina Armstrong is a character. Like, here's the thing you need to realize. You can easily look at Tina Armstrong in Dead or Alive and say, oh, look at that big boobed idiot. She's just a bimbo. She's just oversexualized. I don't think that's fair. See, if that was a real woman, you're insulting a real woman just because of the way she looks and the fact that she likes her figure. Tina Armstrong is a wrestler. She is an American pro wrestler who wants to make a career in wrestling, not only to, aspire to her own dreams of being like a rock star or whatever, and, getting lots of money, but also to please her dad, who's also a wrestler. Her dad is Bass, who's in the same game, right? What about Kasumi? Kasumi, is a ninja trying to follow her own destiny. Ayane's along the same lines. Lei Fang is basically chasing after Jan Li. Christy is an assassin. Lisa is mysterious, and I don't know what's going on with her. And Helena, my lady, Helena, of course, is the leader of Doertech, and a very ambitious woman who basically tries to look out for her interests and her friends' interests, right? So, all of these female characters, yes, they're well endowed. Not all of them, mind you. They have different boob sizes. If you really want to get into it, then look it up or something. Yes, they're all good looking, they're well endowed, but so are the guy characters, right? I don't know why it's fair to say that it's wrong when the female characters are good looking, but when the guy characters are, it's like who cares? And also it's like, why make a huge deal about a character like Tina Armstrong when there's Lei Fang, who isn't as curvy as the other girls, who isn't as ridiculously proportioned as the other girls, who's much more down to earth than the other girls in terms of looks and everything. It's like you ignore that and you say Tina's bad because boobs, and boobs are bad. Huge boobs basically mean a woman has no brains, and it's like, that's not fair to me. So many of these female characters in video games are great characters. They're great, deep, and interesting characters that not only look good, but they do well. It's a work of fiction. It's meant to be impossible and perfect, because that's what it's about. Fantasy, fiction. If you want realism, then look for realism. For example, if you want to play something that's more down to earth with characters that represent reality, play L.A. Noire. L.A. Noire is a game deep-seated in the idea of, film noir, cop drama. Of course you're not going to see, at least not without context, of course, huge, boobed women unnecessarily. Actually, thinking about that, what about The Darkness 2, right? In The Darkness 2, right, obviously, other than your girlfriend Jenny, there's not that many women in The Darkness 2 that you come across. It's just women in that game are just whatever. But when you went into the brothel, there was that huge, really big boobed, hooker, right? Would you say that that's demeaning to women? Well, think about context. What's his name? Your character in The Darkness, who his name escapes me at the moment, had to go into the brothel to basically go undercover to discover stuff about the order he was fighting against. In the brothel, there are, of course, whores. It was a very, explicit place to be in. And that woman had absurdly huge boobs, because she was in a whorehouse. She was a whore, right? That's why that was there. That was context. If that was anywhere else in the game, that would seem like, to me, unnecessary fan service. But in that one point in time, it's meant to show context. Just like in a film, if a character went to a whorehouse in a film, of course you'd see, over-sexualized women, big-breasted women, all that kind of thing. It's like, in games, it seems to be that whenever there's any form of sexualization in terms of women, it's immediately seen to be a sign of, I don't know, a sign that the women are somehow put in there to be objects. And even then, that whore character in The Darkness, she had her purpose. She was supposed, Jackie. She was there to help Jackie get a gun and put an end to the order who'd taken over that house, right? It's not fair to say to these characters that, you're good looking, you've got big boobs, so therefore that's sexist. Look at Nuts vs. Guts video on YouTube. I'll include the link in the description, called "Sexy Does Not Equal Sexist." Like sexy with an equal sign that's crossed over does not equal sexist. And it's basically Cammy talking about how, as in Cammy from Street Fighter, talking about how it doesn't make sense how there's characters like Urien who are have no clothes on, but when a girl has no clothes on, then therefore she's a slut or whatever. It's like, the character of Cammy, for example, she's got very little clothes on, but that's because she's in a battle outfit. She's a character who, yes, is good looking, but she obviously doesn't have huge boobs, and obviously she's got a nice, nice ass. But even then, it's not about that. A good-looking character should not be defined by that, being just a good-looking character. A good-looking character can be defined within their role within the game. The characters are designed to be this way, to look a certain way, based upon what the designer's purposes was for that character. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a story. Cammy has a really deep story. If you really want to know Cammy's story, look at the Street Fighter lore. You'll see that Cammy has a lot to do with characters like M. Bison and all that kind of thing, and the dolls. Right? That's one thing. And what about the new Lara Croft? Right? Obviously, Lara Croft is known to be a sex symbol, and obviously people have sexualized her and all that kind of thing. Now, it's important to point out that stuff like Rule 34, which is if there exists, there's porn of it. Artists' impressions, artists doing like sexy work of video game characters and nude pictures and all that kind of thing. That kind of stuff obviously is a completely different realm. Now, that has nothing to do with the game itself. You could say, oh, what about that? But that's people making drawings of it. That's nothing to do with the actual video game character. Of course you can sexualize them, but to be fair, in the same way that a character that's already sexy can be, made to be nude or whatever, a character that wasn't sexy could be given proportions and made to be sexualized anyway. So no matter which way you look at it, it happens, right? Now, with the new Lara Croft, right, she is incredibly pretty. She's beautiful, right? She's got fairly decent boobs, but she kicks a lot of ass. She survives. She climbs up shit. She stealth kills people. Like, she's pretty much, It's funny how Uncharted took from Tomb Raider, and now Tomb Raider is taking from Uncharted. Like, they kind of helped each other out. The new Tomb Raider was really successful. A lot of people like new Lara's design. They like new Lara's character, and she's very fun. When I look at the new Tomb Raider, right? To be honest, even though I didn't like the other Tomb Raiders, I could say the same thing. I don't look as Lara as a sexual object, just a bunch of tits and ass to please me on the screen. It's like that as I said, that to me is sexist. This character, to me, is a hot, strong, well-defined character who has a great story that you can you can either look up online or play the game to find out. Why should women be defined by the way they look? If a character in a game, a female character in a game, is designed to be good-looking, big-boobed, little-boobed, short, tall, white, black, whatever, why should they be defined by that? Male characters are rarely defined by that, despite the fact that some people do. So why should women, men, whoever, white knights, flip their shit whenever there's a big boob character in a game? Like the sorceress in Dragon's Crown. People say she's over-sexualized, those boobs are absurd. I already mentioned that all the characters are ridiculous and sexualized in that game anyway. The sorceress in Dragon's Crown, people say, oh, she's just some 12-year-old face looking bimbo with impossible boobs. I'm like, okay, it's a work of fantasy. And here's the thing, even then, I'm pretty sure she's got a story. For me, it's like when I look at the sorcerers in Dragon's Crown, I see, okay, yeah, big boobs. Who cares? It's hot, it's sexy, it's nice to look at. But am I playing the game for her boobs? Okay, some people might, but I'm not playing the game for that. I'm playing the game to use the sorceress for what she is, a sorceress. You get me? That's the whole point. It's like people saying that they're there to be just objects. That's you saying that. If the developer of the game actually designed that character to be nothing but a sexualized piece of meat, then yes, you would see it. They would be designed that way. They might be airheaded. They might be stupid. If Ivy from Soul Calibur was just some airheaded bimbo who had no backstory, she was just there to be tits and ass, then yeah, I would say that's wrong. That's just sexualization. If female characters were there to be like that, just to be fan service, then understandably, that's the point. Because like in anime, a lot of girl characters are meant to be just that, brainless fan service. Literally, like they have no personality. They're just wooden. They're just there, to just show off TNA. But the point is, a lot of characters, all female characters, I mean anime or otherwise, aren't 100% like that. I mean, you can watch all those videos and read all those articles about people flipping and shit about fan service in games or anime. But to me, what I want to say is that, honestly, what's sexist to me isn't the character design. What's sexist to me isn't the big boobs or the depictions, the sexualizations. What's sexist to me is the idea that if a woman character is designed as anything other than a no-curved, B-cup woman, then that's somehow a bad thing. That somehow, if a character is good looking, they kind of have a story, that they're, basically brainless fan service. Even Bayonetta. Now Bayonetta is a ridiculous game with an over-sexualized character, shaking her ass in the screen, taking her clothes off literally when she does her wicked weave attacks. But even Bayonetta has a story, believe it or not. You play Bayonetta, and there's actually a story there. It may not be the best story, it may not be the deepest, but that's a story nonetheless. So she may be this sexualized character, but she has her own purpose, she has her own direction. And I think I can respect a character that, looks good, knows they look good, likes to kick ass and do stuff. Just as Dante, is kind of confident in himself, goes crazy, kills demons, and looks stylish doing it. Bayonetta, is sexy and powerful, she knows it, and she looks good doing it. you know, just as I would like a character like Alex Vance from Half-Life, who is not obviously huge boobed or whatever, I'm not going to respect her more just because she's not sexualized. No, I respect Alex Vance because she's a great character. She's a great supporting role. She's, you know, an awesome friend. She's a very smart person, and, you know, the daughter of a strong scientist. She's a great character within the Half-Life universe. But I'm not going to respect her any more or less because of the way she looks. I do not judge a female fictitious character in a video game by the way they look. I like Isabella Valentine in Soul Calibur because she's a strong character and she's good looking. I like Alex Vance in Half-Life because she's a strong character. Obviously she's attractive, but that, you know, that doesn't matter too much because it's more about her role within the game. I like a character like Talim just as much as I like a character like Sophitia, who's more sexualized, I guess you could say. You know, and also, I'm going to give an example of Arcana Heart 3. Of course, Arcana Heart 3, yes, we all know, it's this absurd Japanese game with all girls and blah blah blah, you know, sexualization. Even though someone pointed out, because I was talking to somebody once in a stream chat, fighting in stream chat, that basically explaining that a lot of the characters in Arcana Heart were designed to be like fetishes, especially for like Japanese people because they like schoolgirls and shit like that. Okay, look, fetishes aside, point is, if you don't have a fetish for that kind of stuff, then I don't think it's really marketed to you. And to be fair, it's like saying once again that only big boobed women are somehow sexualized. Well, how do you not know that small boobed women, small boobed petite women aren't, like, they don't get other people off? Like, you'd be surprised the amount of people that like cream themselves with the idea of Talim. Like, just honestly, that's the honest truth. Women body type doesn't define anything. It doesn't demean anybody, and it's not, you know, like, if you get offended by that, well, I'm sorry, that's you. It's like, I get offended by stuff. For example, I get offended by people saying man up because I somehow I feel like it's somehow threatening my manhood that somebody's telling me to man up is implying I'm not a man. But other guys don't get offended by that. So for me to say I speak for all men when I say that man up is offensive to men, no, I don't. That's my opinion. In a similar way, saying that like girls seeing big boobed women in games is demeaning to women because it's giving the impression this is how all women should be like. That's not true. If you find that offensive, well, I'm sorry. Things are offensive in real life. Okay? And the fact is, in Arcana Heart 3, right? While you may find some things about that game offensive, the fact of the matter is, whenever people tell me that all women characters in games are the same, I point to Arcana Heart 3 and I'm like, what about that game? That's a game with all female characters. Are they all the same? Do they all have big boobs? Are they the same height? Are they the same race? Are they the same hair color? Are they all, you know, stupid bimbos with, you know, no backstory or whatever? The biggest boob character in that game is actually one of the nicest. She's not a bimbo. She's not stupid. She's a character with a big family. She's a shrine maiden, right? Obviously, yes, shrine maiden fetishes, yeah, you know, get it off all your chest or whatever. But she is a character with who cares about her family, who cares about her friends, who cares about her duty. So, of course, you can look at that character, I forget her name, I think it's Mayuri or whatever, in Arcana Heart 3 and just say, look at this bimbo character with her absurd boobs, sexualization. But when you actually play Arcana Heart 3, you actually find out, hey, you know what, this is actually a really nice girl with a really nice story. So, you have to learn to look past it. You have to learn to look past the boobs. Just like, you know, it's easy to say a character like Jin Kazama in the Tekken series is nothing but like a steroid pump, shirtless idiot who's just meant to make, you know, girls cream themselves. I'm flipping the table on his head, and isn't really character of the deep story. But then you actually play the story and you realize that Jin Kazama is one of the central characters of the Tekken plot. He's the, well, kind of main character, since Kazuya kind of lost that role after a while. He's the kind of main character who is going down a dark path due to his dark lineage, right? It's like, don't define a character just by the way they look. The way a character looks is meant within context. If it's out of context, of course it's wrong. It's meant within context, within a fictitious world, to show something off. It's a work of art in certain ways. And it doesn't always mean that a character like that is defined by that. See, it needs to stop being women characters are sexualized because as women they give off this image. It's like, I don't believe that for 1 second a female character somehow represents all female characters, and if a female character looks a certain way, then it represents them all in a bad way. How does that make sense? It's like, it's the notion of role models. I mean, but why even assign a role model to anything? It's like, to me, when a work of fiction is created, it may have an intention from the author, but in no way does that intention carry over all the way to everybody. Some people might see Master Chief as a role model, some might not. Some people might see Isabel Valentine as a role model, some might not. The character isn't designed to be this person that everyone should aspire to. You might like him, some might not. Some people might aspire to be like Prophet from Crisis, as unrealistic as that is. Some people might aspire to be like Tomb Raider, but does that mean everybody should? Does that mean that's what the purpose of the game is? To aspire to be like unrealistic video game characters? I don't think so. And to bring back the point about Arcana Heart 3, in Arcana Heart 3, there are different girls of shapes and sizes. See, now my three main characters in Arcana Heart 3 are the main character Weiss, is spelled Weiss, who is obviously, she's a schoolgirl. She's like an angel or whatever. I don't know. I can't remember the story too well. But she doesn't have huge boobs. Like, in fact, she's got like no boobs at all. I think she's one of the smallest breasted characters in the game. And she actually doesn't show that much skin. Obviously, one of her alts, she doesn't have leggings on, but she's literally fully clothed. The only thing you can see on Weiss's body is her head and her hair. Literally, that's all you can see. And a lot of characters in the game are like that. My second character is what's his name? Elsa, who's a nun, like a combat nun, or like a combat cross and everything. Same with her. The only things you can see are her hands and head, and her boobs are decently sized, I guess. My third character is Mei Fang. Yes, she's a robot with huge boobs and shows all her skin. But who the fuck cares? It's like, that's the thing. Boobs should not be a reason that a character is defined by. We don't define guy characters by their muscles. Why define women character by their boobs? To me, it's sexist to say that first of all, it's sexist to say that women in games are somehow any less because of their proportions, because of their design, or any of that kind of thing. And the final point I want to make is about defending women. I mentioned this before, that do people feel like women are so weak that they can't understand the difference between fiction and reality? Do people think that women are so weak that if they see a female character in a game, that it somehow threatens their womanhood? Or do people think that women in real life are so weak that they can't understand that all women are different? Because all women are different. That all women are different. Some have big boobs, some don't. Some have nice hips, some don't. Some have big legs, some don't. Because the thing is, you have to think about, newsflash, women in real life have big boobs as well. And it's not just porn stars. To say that a woman who has big boobs is demeaning to other women and offensive, to me, that's offensive to the big boobed women. Like, big boob women in real life, would you define them by their looks? By their big boobs? By, their proportions? That's not fair. It's not fair to them. So why do you think it's fair to say that about video game characters? Obviously they're not real, but the point is, it's like, by saying that it's demeaning to women in real life, is it demeaning to all women? Do you speak for all women when you say that? When a woman tells me that video game characters are oversexualized and this is demeaning to women, I'm like, no, that's your opinion. If you're offended by that, well, I'm sorry. I guess the game's not for you, or the games overall aren't for you. But the point is, other women are fine with it. Have people ever asked how large-breasted women feel? What if there's a woman, and there are women like this, or what about like girls who cosplay, for example? Let's say a girl who cosplays as Ivy, who has the same boob size as a girl like Ivy. Do you think she's like, oh my god, big boobs in games, this is so offensive to me and my big... Wait, actually, no, my boobs are the same size. You know what I mean? It's like, are big boobed women just as offended as women who aren't like that? That's a thing to think about. Like, ask big boobed women that you know, or just maybe do a survey or something. Say, are large-breasted women offended by large-breasted women in games? Do they feel that they're giving the wrong impression of people, or the wrong impression of women or whatever? Look, to me, sexism in gaming is assigning that there is an inherently sexist thing about games. To me, the games themselves, video games themselves, aren't these inherently built sexist machines to create over-sexualized characters with no backstories, out of context, absurd boobs, just bimbos. They're characters that, have no storylines. No, that's not true. Within context, regardless of size, shape, be it your Tiny Tina, your Talim, or your Isabel Valentine, or your Taki, point is, each of these characters have stories, purposes. They were put in there for a reason. They're within context, right? They are by design. Not all female characters in games are the same, right? They don't demean women, they don't define women, they don't do any of these stupid things people assign them to, okay? The Sorceress in Dragon's Crown's boobs are absurd, but so is the rest of the game. it's a fiction. It's a work of art that shows a woman with absurd boobs, right? Absurdly big boobs. But in no way do I feel that it offends anybody. It pleases some people. Some people don't like it. Other people don't. But it shouldn't be that people shouldn't do that because some people might get offended, right? And it is sexist to think that women in real life are so weak-willed or are needed to be protected and sheltered from such images. Look, give women more credit. Let women themselves decide. Don't speak for all women. Let women themselves decide whether or not they're defended by stuff. Don't say we need to protect all women from big boobs in games. We need to protect all women from sexualization because it's wrong. No. Let women themselves decide whether or not Isabel Valentine is somehow demeaning to them. Let women themselves realize that not all characters are like Isabel Valentine. Some of them are like Talim or Amy. Let women realize that guy characters are just as sexualized in different ways, of course. Different ways. Guy characters are just as sexualized as women characters are. Let women on their own realize that it's not about being a female character or a male character. It's about being a character by design, and we're defined not by the way we look, not by how we're, not how we're proportioned or whatever, but by our purpose within context. Okay? The real sexism in gaming is in the design of the characters. The real sexism in gaming is people who continually get offended and assign sexist roles to situations, and believing that women somehow can't think for themselves. That to me is what's sexist, alright? This is JusticeSoulTuna with another voice of JST. See everybody later.